What if someone disappeared, but their voice never did? Would you call the cops, or a priest, if you heard footsteps from an empty apartment? And how do you explain a closet nailed shut from the inside? This isn't just another ghost story. It happened right here in Portland. My neighbor vanished without a trace, but every night since, I still hear him talking, pacing, and sometimes, even screaming. Everyone said I imagined it, until I opened his door, and found something that should have never been left behind. Stay with me, because every detail you're about to hear will make you question what's really on the other side of your walls. I remember the last time I saw Mr. Carter. It was a Thursday, rainy, cold, and forgettable in every way, except for the knock on his door. He opened it halfway, gave me his usual polite nod, and mumbled something about the pipes making noise again. I didn't think much of it. But the next morning, his apartment was dead quiet. No footsteps, no creaking floorboards, no late-night jazz music coming through the walls. At first, I thought maybe he'd gone on a trip, but his mail started piling up. His car was still in the same spot. And by day 6, there was a weird smell leaking from under his door, faint, like old garlic and metal. That's when the landlord called the cops. They forced the door open and walked into a scene that haunts me to this day. Lights on, TV humming static, a bowl of cereal still half full, and a chair turned toward the window like someone had just left it. But Mr. Carter? Gone. No sign of struggle, no forced entry, just vanished. Here's where it gets strange. The police pulled security footage from the hallway camera. You can see Mr. Carter unlocking his door at 7:43 p.m. But there's no footage of him ever leaving, not that night. Not the next morning, not ever. And even weirder? At exactly 3:17 a.m., every night since, the hallway camera glitches for exactly 6 seconds. Just static, like someone walks past it. But no one ever shows up on screen. I thought I was going crazy. But then I started hearing it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing from one side of the apartment to the other. A cough, sometimes even a man humming faintly, just past the wall separating our living rooms. I told myself it was plumbing. Maybe the building creaked, but I've lived here 5 years. I know the sounds. These weren't echoes. These were habits. His habits. I even asked the girl living below us if she ever heard anything. She said, "Yeah, sometimes it sounds like someone's dragging their feet up there." But didn't that guy move out? I didn't have the heart to tell her no, he didn't move out. He just disappeared. You know, I used to think these stories were exaggerations. That people twisted reality because grief demanded a ghost. But I'm telling you the truth. As clearly as I can. Someone vanished, but the sounds they made never left. And that, more than anything, is what scares me. Because if sound can linger long after the person is gone, what else stays behind? Let's talk about the secrets this building was never supposed to reveal. After the police left, they sealed Mr. Carter's apartment with yellow tape and a quiet shrug. No foul play. No body, just a missing person case in a city that sees too many of them. But I couldn't let it go. I asked the landlord, Greg, if anyone had come to clean the place out. He gave me this half smile. The kind people use when they don't want to answer a question directly. "We're handling it," he said. "These things take time." But a week later, the tape was gone, the door was locked, and the lights were still turning on at night. That's when I got suspicious. So I asked around the building. There's this older lady named Marlene on the 4th floor, lived here for nearly 20 years. When I mentioned Mr. Carter, she didn't seem surprised. She just nodded slowly and said, "He's not the first, sweetheart. That apartment, it's always been bad." Turns out, in the last 7 years, 3 tenants had vanished from Unit 6B. All of them single, all of them quiet, routine people. 2 had missing person reports filed. The 3rd, just moved out overnight. I confronted Greg about it. At first, he denied everything, but when I brought up the hallway camera, the same glitch every night at 3:17 a.m., his tone changed. He admitted something I never expected. That camera didn't malfunction, it was turned off remotely. And it always reset exactly 6 seconds later. Every single night. He blamed it on an old maintenance system, Ghost Code. He called it leftover from when the building still had an analog security grid. But that's not how Ghost Code works. I looked it up. What's worse is what I found in the city records. Unit 6B was listed under a special condition, transient occupancy exception. It's a legal loophole that lets landlords avoid disclosing prior incidents, including deaths or disappearances, if the tenant stayed under a year. Mr. Carter lived there 11 months and 2 weeks. They never had to tell him what happened before. And they never had to tell me, either. Here's what I've learned from all of this. If someone's too eager to rent you a place, and the rent feels suspiciously cheap, there's usually a reason. Especially if the reason has a name. And footsteps. But it wasn't just the legal dodge or the faulty camera that unsettled me. It was what I found out next. One of the previous tenants, Matthew Ricks, had left behind a voicemail on his sister's phone just hours before he vanished. His voice was shaky, almost whispering, and all he said was, "If you hear it, don't answer." He asks first. That voicemail was timestamped 3:17 a.m. Same time, same pattern, same apartment. I started to wonder, was Mr. Carter the last, or just the latest? Because what I found in that room finally made me question if any of us were ever alone in that building. I know I shouldn't have gone in there. The apartment had been locked since Mr. Carter vanished. But one afternoon, the cleaning crew accidentally left the door cracked open. Just a sliver. Just enough to tempt a curious neighbor who couldn't sleep at night anymore. So yeah, I went in. At first, it was exactly how the cops described it. TV still buzzing static. That same bowl of stale cereal on the table. Mail unopened. Socks still laid out for the next day. Everything screamed unfinished. But what struck me most was the silence. Not peaceful silence, but that thick, too quiet kind, like the room was holding its breath. Then I noticed something strange. In the bedroom, there was a freestanding closet, built into the wall. But the edges were uneven. Newer, different paint. More importantly, it had been nailed shut. From the inside. Not locked, not glued. Nailed. 7 thick, rusty nails pounded into the doorframe, angled outward. Like someone had hammered them from within the closet. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was obsession. But I found a screwdriver in the kitchen drawer and started prying them out. One by one. The smell hit first. Damp, metallic, like mold and iron, and something older. Something wrong. Inside was a narrow crawl space. Barely wider than my shoulders. The walls were scraped up, deep scratches like fingernails or a dull object clawing at the wood. On the floor was an old cassette recorder. Cracked and silent. Next to it, a single Polaroid photo. Faded. Torn. It showed what looked like the inside of this same closet, but with something standing in the shadows. A shape. Vague. Human, but wrong. I took the recorder home. Don't ask me why. Maybe I needed proof. That night, I played the tape. It was mostly static, but around the 2-minute mark, a voice broke through. Barely audible. Male. Familiar. And terrified. Don't listen to it. Don't listen. It's behind the sound. I swear, when I heard that, my whole body went cold. That voice? It sounded just like Mr. Carter. Later that week, I showed the photo and tape to a former tenant I tracked down, someone who moved out just 3 days after moving into 6B. He took one look at the photo and refused to speak. But as he left, he muttered, "He waits inside the echo. That's where he hides." Since that night, I stopped sleeping near walls. And I stopped playing recordings after midnight. If someone nails themselves into a closet from the inside, they're not hiding from the world. They're trying to keep something else from getting out. And what scares me most is this. I don't think Mr. Carter was the first to hear it. I think he was just the last one who tried to stop it. Because the moment I shared that tape with someone else, things didn't just get worse, they got louder. There are things you find, and then there are things you shouldn't touch. That tape recorder from the closet? I shouldn't have touched it. And I definitely shouldn't have pressed play. At first, it just sounded like static, low, heavy, like wind blowing through wires. But underneath it was something else. A frequency almost too low to notice, unless you were listening for it. It didn't sound like a voice at first. It sounded like a machine breathing. But after running it through an audio cleaning tool on my laptop, things became clearer. I picked up a phrase. Barely a whisper. I never left. I never left. It looped. Over and over. Like whoever was speaking had nothing else to say, just that one fact. I didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, my phone rang. No caller ID. Just a long, flat silence when I answered. But after 5 seconds, there it was. The same whisper, same voice, not from the phone speaker, but from behind me. In the room. I dropped the phone. Something had changed. Later that day, I sent the tape to a friend of mine, Brandon, an audio engineer at a small radio station in Seattle. He's worked with weird signals before, pirate broadcasts, magnetic interference, even EVP. I figured if anyone could explain it, he could. He called me that night. Shaken. That thing isn't a voice. He said, it's layers of sound. Voice is just the top layer. Underneath, there's a subharmonic frequency. It's mimicking human tone. But it's not human. Then he sent me a screen capture of the audio spectrum. There were shapes in the sound. Not natural waveforms, shapes. Almost like glyphs or symbols. And here's where it got worse. The next night, Brandon's station picked up a random spike in signal on an unused AM band, 1460 kHz. He tuned in out of curiosity, and what he heard was the exact same whisper from the tape. Looping again. I never left. But Brandon didn't keep the tape. He mailed it back to me the next morning, with a sticky note taped on the outside of the box. One word. Don't. And then, radio silence. He stopped replying to texts. His voicemail was full. His station's office was closed, due to a personal emergency. To this day, I don't know what happened to him. But here's what I do know. Sound carries more than information. Sometimes, it carries memory. Sometimes, it carries presence. And some voices weren't meant to be heard twice. If I've learned anything, it's this. Just because you can record something, doesn't mean you should. And just because something sounds human, doesn't mean it ever was. Because I used to think this was an isolated horror, but I was wrong. Others have heard the same echo, and not all of them made it out. After everything that happened with Mr. Carter, the whispers, the tape, the photo, I started digging. I needed to know if I was alone in this. If anyone else had ever heard something, long after someone was gone. And that's when I found them. Real people, real cases. The same terrifying pattern, playing out across the country like an echo bouncing between missing lives. Let me tell you about Brian Schaefer. He was a medical student in Columbus, Ohio. In April 2006, he went out with friends, walked into a bar, and never walked out. I mean that literally. There's CCTV footage of Brian entering the bar at 1:15 a.m. He smiles, waves, heads in, but there's no footage of him leaving. No blind spots, no back exits, nothing. It's like he just vanished between frames. And here's the part that gave me chills. The bar owner later said he kept hearing movement upstairs, even though the space had been cleared out and locked after the investigation. Footsteps, whispers, someone pacing, just above the bar. Sound familiar? Then there's Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy who vanished in the Great Smoky Mountains in 1969. His family watched him walk into a bush during a game of hide and seek, and he was never seen again. What's disturbing is what came after. Over the next year, multiple hikers, completely unrelated to each other, reported hearing a child crying deep in the woods. The cries would stop when they got close. No body, no clothing, nothing ever found. And the pattern doesn't stop there. In 1995, a woman named Lena Hartwell went missing from a roadside motel in Utah. Her room was left untouched, bed made, bags still packed, keys on the dresser. But the room next to hers? Several guests complained of hearing muffled crying and a woman repeating the same phrase at night. Please, don't let it in. When staff finally checked, the room was empty. That phrase kept getting reported for 3 months, even when the room was vacant. And it makes you wonder, if voices linger after people disappear. What exactly is lingering? Is it trauma burned into the space? Or is something darker using that voice to stay behind? I don't have all the answers. But after hearing the same whispers in Mr. Carter's apartment, after hearing my name in a voice that should have been gone, I believe something stays. Something that doesn't want to be forgotten. Something that might be looking for a new place to hide. If there's a lesson in all this, it's this. When the sound doesn't match the silence, listen carefully. It's not always your mind playing tricks. Sometimes it's someone else, trying to get through. Because some echoes follow you, no matter how far you run. I thought moving would fix everything. New apartment, new city, new walls with no memories etched into the drywall. It felt good. For a while. The silence was real again, peaceful. Not loaded. Until it wasn't. It started with the light bulb in the hallway outside my bedroom. Every night, it flickered, at exactly 3:17 a.m. I changed it. It kept flickering. Then the soft hum returned, the same one I used to hear through the walls of Mr. Carter's unit. Low, pulsing, almost rhythmic, like a breath. I told myself it was coincidence. I even laughed about it with my sister over the phone. But the next morning, she sent me a voice note. It was just static at first. But halfway through, I heard it. That same, whispering voice I thought I left behind. I never left. That broke me. I went to a local priest, not out of faith, but desperation. He listened, carefully, and then he said something I still think about. If something attaches itself through sound, it doesn't care where you live. It follows what remembers it. He blessed my apartment, gave me a small vial of holy water, and said to avoid mirrors and radios after dark. I didn't understand why, until one night, brushing my teeth, I looked up, and saw a handprint slowly fade off the bathroom mirror. It wasn't mine. It was too long, too thin, and the condensation never fogged over that spot again. That was the final straw. I went back to Portland a month later, needing closure. Unit 6B was still vacant, still sealed, but the super let me walk through, said I could take a quick look for legal reasons. Whatever that means. Inside, everything had a thin coat of dust, except for the tape recorder. Someone had cleaned it, moved it back to the center of the room, and as I stood there, door open, light fading through the blinds, the hallway camera clicked back on. You could hear the whir of the motor. It hadn't worked in months. No one touched it. It just woke up. And then I realized, he never moved out. Mr. Carter isn't gone. He's part of that place now. Or worse, part of something that's been there long before him. And maybe, just maybe, it isn't about the apartment at all. Maybe it's about being heard. Because here's the hardest truth I've had to accept. Some people don't disappear. They just stop being seen and start being heard. If you've ever heard something you couldn't explain, a whisper, a knock, a voice where there shouldn't be one, you're not alone, and you're not imagining it. Leave a comment, tell your story, because silence is the only thing that lets these echoes grow louder. And next time you hear something behind your wall, don't answer back.